Japan was swarming with rumors. Stories of two exceptional samurai spread by word of mouth from province to province, fanning curiosity and anticipation of an epic clash. The wandering samurai Miyamoto Musashi and the master of the swallow blade Sasaki Kojiro had become legendary figures, and their names were praised with admiration. In dojos and court meetings, the argument was bound to rage. Who was the best swordsman in Japan? Musashi's supporters lauded his unusual two-sword technique, his feline nimbleness, and his invincible aura. He was the samurai who had already won more than 60 duels, a warrior who had challenged convention and created his own style, suitable for any situation. He's like a god of war, some said. His swords are the manifestation of death itself. Kojiro's supporters surprised his exquisite technique, the deadly accuracy of his subamegeshi, and the elegance of his movements. He was the master of the Ganryu school, a polished and disciplined samurai who had attained perfection through study and constant practice. Kojiro is a sword artist, they firmly stated. His style is an expression of the harmony and beauty of combat and tradition. The rivalry between Musashi and Kojiro became stronger every day, driven by rumors and speculation. There was a clash of styles, philosophies, and personalities. One stood for tradition, the other for innovation. The tension was mounting. The expectation of a showdown was becoming increasingly likely. Japan held its breath, eagerly awaiting the moment when the two sword giants would square off to finally determine the ultimate warrior. The tensions eventually snapped. A letter, bearing the Ganryu skull crest, reached Miyamoto Musashi's hands. The wandering samurai, no stranger to duel imitations, noticed something different about the scroll. The elegant, sharp handwriting and the formal, challenging language revealed the importance of the sender. Sasaki Kojiro was at last inviting him to a formal duel. Kojiro described Musashi's reputation as a warrior of outstanding talent, but unconventional methods, and expressed his willingness to compare techniques to determine who was the true master of the sword in Japan. He offered a public duel, at a place and date to be set by Musashi, to allow the world to witness the match between the era's two greatest swordsmen. With an ironic smile on his lips, Musashi readily accepted the challenge. He had been waiting for that moment, the opportunity to take on the legendary Kojiro and prove the superiority of his style at once. He wrote a straightforward reply, accepting Kojiro's proposal and recommending a location for the duel: the island of Ganryūjima, a small rocky knoll off the coast of the Seto Inland Sea, near the town of Shimonoseki. That was not by chance. Isolated and deserted, the island was steeped in symbolism. Its name, meaning Island of the Swallow Stone, was a nod to Kojiro Ganryu's school and his renowned Subamegeshi technique. It was Kojiro's symbolic territory, a place where he felt secure and powerful. By choosing the island, Musashi was presenting a direct challenge to his opponent, expressing his intention to defeat him in his own territory. News of the duel traveled like lightning. All of Japan waited in suspense for the clash between the two sword titans. In the Hosokawa clan fortress, Sasaki Kojiro readied himself for the clash as disciplined and stern as a Zen monk. He knew that the fight against Miyamoto Musashi was to be the greatest trial of his life, a litmus test not only for his sword skills, but also for his spirit. His days were spent on exhausting and intense training. He practiced his slashes with the nodachi, his blade swooping as fast and as precise as a swallow, refining every movement, every wrist turn, every step. He revisited the techniques of the Ganryu school, striving for perfection in every detail, ever subtly. He meditated for hours, draining his mind of thoughts and emotions, striving for the sheer composure and concentration needed to face Musashi. Kojiro also undertook various purification rituals, bathing in herbs and incense, praying to the gods and the ancestors, to cleanse his body and soul of any impurities that could disturb him during the duel. He was determined to enter the fight with his mind and body in perfect harmony, uncluttered by doubts and fears, ready to face his destiny. Just as Kojiro pursued inner peace through discipline and tradition, Musashi approached the duel in an entirely different manner. He paid no heed to rituals or conventional methods. His shrewd mind looked for an edge in every detail, every nuance, and he was quick to try unconventional methods to unsettle his opponent. Musashi knew that Kojiro was a terrific opponent, a sword master who had been preparing himself for the duel for years. To beat him, he would need to harness all the weaponry at his disposal, not just his swordsmanship, but also his intellect and ability to manipulate. Musashi started spreading rumors concerning his own perceptions for the duel, casting a halo of mystery and unpredictability around him. He spoke of new secret techniques he had developed, of long hours of meditation in remote caves, and of encounters with supernatural beings who conferred on him special powers. He knew that such gossip would soon be heard by Kojiro, instilling seeds of uncertainty and doubt in his mind. He wanted Kojiro to enter the duel with his spirit dented, his concentration fractured, vulnerable to unexpected attacks. The battle between Musashi and Kojiro had already started, even before the first sword clash. It was a mind duel, a psychological warfare that unfolded in the shadows, among the hearsay and expectations of a Japan eager for blood and glory. However, after much training and running scenarios in his mind of how the fight could go, Musashi concluded that he would not be capable of beating Kojiro with his two-sword technique, and with just his katana, his opponent would have a significant reach advantage, since Kojiro was the greatest living master of the long Nodachi sword. Musashi now had to devise an innovative strategy, or his death was almost guaranteed. When the day the duel arrived on Ganryūjima Beach, a small crowd awaited Kojiro's arrival. They included samurai from the Hosokawa clan, some curious noblemen, and a few merchants and peasants who had sailed to the island just to witness the historic duel. Local government officials were also in attendance to assure that the match was run as per the samurai rules and traditions. The atmosphere was silent and expectant, the air as dense as before a storm. Upon landing on the island, Kojiro was met with respectful bowings and salutations. He walked to an open spot near the beach where the duel would occur. His disciples laid out a silk mat on the ground, and Kojiro knelt for one last meditation before the fight. He shut his eyes, took a deep breath, and emptied his mind of any thought or emotion that could get in the way. He was striving for inner peace, a connection with the natural flow of the universe, the mind-body harmony upon which his swordsmanship was based. The sun ascended in the sky. The hours passed, but Miyamoto Musashi did not arrive. If the crowd had been silent at first, they now began to whisper, worried by the wandering samurai's delay. Motionless in his meditation, Kojiro appeared oblivious to the passage of time and the ever-growing anxiety of the spectators. But his peace was only on the surface. Musashi's strategy was in motion. He had deliberately chosen to arrive late, using time as a weapon to undermine his opponent. He knew that Kojiro was a proud and disciplined samurai, used to punctuality and respect for traditions. A delay would anger him, break his concentration, and, if his focus were off, he could start second-guessing himself. At last, a small boat emerged on the horizon. Standing at the bow, Miyamoto Musashi towered like an imposing figure with the sun behind him. His ordinary traveling clothes and unkempt hair contrasted with Kojiro's ceremonial kimono. Musashi carried a long wooden oar, the end of which had been honed and shaped into a long rustic weapon. As he landed, Musashi disregarded the cheers of the crowd and walked straight into the dueling ground, his eyes locked on Sasaki Kojiro. The Ganryu master, now rising from the silk mat on which he had been meditating, looked angry and frustrated by the long wait. Musashi's unexpected weapon choice surprised and unsettled Kojiro, who felt mortified by the lack of respect for the duel's traditions. His confidence was sapped by a sense of doubt and uncertainty. The cold, reasoned strategy of Musashi was now in play. He had used the delay and the makeshift weapon to destabilize his opponent. Kojiro drew his long sword and tossed away its sheath. Musashi smiled and said, "You have already lost, Kojiro. A true swordsman never tosses away his sheath this early." Musashi smashed his spirit even harder with this remark. If Kojiro felt sure of his victory, he would have kept it at his waist, waiting to take his blade back. The most important hour of the lives of the two great samurai had come. Both were in their prime. Musashi was more experienced, but Kojiro had the typical agility and speed of a younger fighter. The decisive moment now arrived. The crowd became silent. The only sound came from the wind rushing through the trees and the waves crashing on the rocks. All eyes were drawn to the two samurai, who were facing each other in the heart of the clearing near the beach. Sasaki Kojiro sprang into attack, his movements as fast and precise as those of a flying swallow. His sharp oar held high, Musashi kept his distance, studying his opponent. Kojiro then decided to use his ultimate technique. It was the Tsubame Geshi, the swallow counter, a fast, sweeping blow with a wrist twist that made the blade switch direction at the very last moment. Yet, Musashi was ready and positioned himself to always keep the sun at his back. As soon as Kojiro launched the Tsubame Geshi, Musashi dodged it and the blade missed his head by millimeters. Using the opening left by the strike and Kojiro's sunburned eyes, Musashi leapt straight at Kojiro with his long oar rising in the air. Kojiro was struck in the forehead. The thud of the impact was horrifying, and some claimed to have heard the cracking of his skull. His nodashi slipped out of his hands and tumbled to the ground. The astonished crowd witnessed the end of the duel that had been heralded as an epic battle. But the reality had been sudden and swift. As always, death had come unexpectedly and violently. There was no joy or exhilaration in Musashi's eyes, only a profound sadness and a strange emptiness. He had prevailed, but the victory had a bitter taste. He had beaten a great warrior, one of the greatest swordsmen, but reaching the summit of his quest to make a name for himself with his sword failed to bridge the void in his soul. News of Sasaki Kojiro's death quickly spread throughout Japan. Everyone was shocked and overwhelmed with disbelief. Many refused to accept that the legendary Ganryu master had been defeated, and all the more so by a wandering samurai with a boat oar. Kojiro's admirers grieved his death and questioned Musashi's approach to the duel, while Musashi's supporters cheered his victory. The Ganryujima duel became a watershed moment in the history of feudal Japan, an event that stirred up controversy and discussions that would last for centuries. Kojiro's death sealed the end of an era. Miyamoto Musashi had truly ascended as Japan's greatest swordsman, but his victory was not purely a personal triumph, but also a burden, one that he would have to bear for the rest of his life.